Welcome back to One Piece Explained. This is my breakdown for Season 2, Episode 1 of the live-action One Piece series by Netflix and Tomorrow Studios. If you're new around here, I do these in-depth breakdowns of the live-action and the manga, and this episode in particular had so many little details, Easter eggs, and connections that you may have missed. If you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, most of my videos are intended for both new fans and longtime fans alike, so I'll try my best to speak around major spoilers that are better enjoyed at your own pace, and I'll be saving the discussion for all of those at the end of the video for those interested. I'll keep this intro short since the rest of this video is so long, but I just wanted to quickly say thank you all for supporting this channel. Can't wait to get into this season with you all, so let's do this. We open on the 153rd Marine Base under attack. Recall that this was the Marine branch that we saw in Season 1 located in Shellstown, and we get two familiar faces as our initial point of view characters with Ukari and Sada, played by Richard Wright Firth and Claire Glover. Ukari was the Marine whom Nami stole her uniform from in Episode 1, and is actually an adaptation of the Marine who accidentally scratches Axe Hand Morgan's statue in the source material, while Sada is a live-action exclusive character who caught Nami in the map room. We soon learn that the explosions all over the base are the work of these three individuals, with Jazara Jaslin's Miss Valentine, Cameron Johnson's Mr. 5, and Lyra Obova's Miss All Sunday. Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine are shown in their original outfits from the Whiskey Peak arc, while Miss All Sunday's outfit is taken from her appearance during the Alabasta arc. Mr. 5 mentions how the East Blue is known for its reputation as the weakest of all the seas, a bit of world building divulged to us by Mihawk back in Season 1, and we learn that they are here to tie up loose ends, bringing us to an incredible sequence of Miss All Sunday obliterating an entire platoon of Marines with her Devil Fruit powers. While not explicitly mentioned in this episode, Miss All Sunday has the powers of the flower fruit, allowing her to grow any part of her body on any surface. This is accompanied by some imagery of pink flower petals being shown when her abilities are being used. Now, in the source material, her powers were first teased during her run-in with the Straw Hats at the end of the Whiskey Peak arc, as we were left with the impression that she had some sort of telekinesis when she quickly disarmed the crew, and would not be divulged in full until a bit later on during the Alabasta arc. This series kind of upends all of that by showcasing her abilities on a full display right off the rip, and understandably so, as it makes for a great action sequence. She makes a tongue-in-cheek comment about the Marines having so many arms, referring to all of their weaponry, just before she literally sprouts limbs from their bodies to assassinate the group. It's great to see that she is one of the characters who will be naming their attacks in the live action, with this evidently being her dose fleur, which follows the naming convention of most of her techniques, with the Spanish number followed by the French word for flower. Now, of note, the dose fleur technique was not named until later on in the series, where she spawned 12 arms to restrain her enemy, whereas here, it seems that she's just using it to spawn 12 limbs against the platoon of Marines standing in her way. One fun detail here is that her nails are painted in this adaptation to match the color of the flower petals that are seen when her limbs disperse. This scene works really well to show off the difference in power between this new group of characters and our heroes from Season 1, who struggle to infiltrate and make it out of this very same Marine base. We are introduced to Ripper. This was the Marine who became the commander of the 153rd branch after Axe Hand Morgan's defeat in the source material. There are three distinct paintings on the wall to the right, and they're a bit hard to make out exactly. The one toward the back of the platoon sort of resembles a portrait of Ripper, while the next one down looks to be a rendition of Vincent Reagan's Vice Admiral Garp with his dog hat atop his head. The one on the opposite side is also difficult to see clearly, but given that the other two look to be of Garp and Ripper, two Marines who took control of the base, albeit briefly in Garp's case back in Season 1, I have to wonder if this is supposed to be Axe Hand Morgan, though he doesn't seem to have a visible axe in this portrait, so maybe not. There are some very fun Easter eggs to high-ranking Marine and government officers with these two busts on the opposite side of the entrance. To the left is Sengoku, the current fleet admiral of the Marines, and over to the right is Kong, the commander-in-chief of the world government. This is not the first nod to Kong in the live action, as we've seen him credited for commissioning the map of the East Blue that was shown during the credit sequences of Season 1. There are two more similar statues on the opposite side of the hallway where the Marines entered, but they are largely obfuscated throughout this entire scene, with our best look being these blurry stills of the one on the left. It seems to be of a slender person with some sort of handlebar mustache. Given how this hall seems to pay respect to high-ranking officials, it would stand to reason that this is someone of similar importance to Sengoku or Kong, but it's hard to match any character that we know of in these kinds of positions to this blurry figure, so let me know what your best guesses are down in the comments. Most of the paintings, statues, and decor that we saw in this base in Season 1 were in service of Axe Hand Morgan himself, so it's really nice to see how much has changed since his removal. The chair that Ukari falls into is the same one from Morgan's office. You can spot the similar lion-like design on the armrests, as well as the two axes over the Marine symbol, which was Morgan's personal stylized version of his insignia. It is kind of cool to see that his seat was taken from him both figuratively and literally, as this chair now finds itself in a hallway surrounded by actual heroes and high-ranking officers of note. This takes us to the Marine base's morgue, and just as I speculated in my trailer breakdowns leading up to this season, we come to find out that these three are here to recover the body of Mr. 7. You'll recall that Mr. 7 approached Zoro in Season 1 with an offer to join the organization known as Brokeworks, which was turned down and led to the agent getting sliced in two and brought into Shellstown, where Zoro attempted to claim his bounty. This was all an adaptation of a scene that we never saw in the manga proper, and was only alluded to during the Alabasta arc. Oda drew a quick doodle of Mr. 7 in a later SBS when asked about the Frontier agent, and this would later get realized in full in the live action, with Oda providing a fleshed out concept art for the character, who was brought to life by Rebaon Ben Kagosamore. Mr. 5 mentions that now they'll have to find a replacement, teasing the appearance of the new Mr. 7 that we actually saw in the source material, who I imagine we will meet in the next season. Now, this entire plotline is something exclusive to the live action, as we've never seen Miss All Sunday interact with Mr. 5 or Miss Valentine before. However, it is fairly plausible that something like this has happened, as it was stated by Mr. 3 that leaving the corpses of their members around for the public to find would prove troublesome for their organization. That said, in the manga, it's unlikely that any one of their members would end up at a Marine base in the first place, since Brokeworks was largely unknown to the Marines until Smoker began to uncover the conspiracy during the end of the Little Garden arc, meaning that turning a Brokeworks agent into the Marines like this wouldn't really amount to much of a reward. However, the live action has deviated from this just a bit, as we saw in Season 1 that Garp was already well aware of the existence of Brokeworks. This may also speak to why it's so uncharacteristic of the group to openly raid a Marine base like we see here, as in the source material, Brokeworks is written as this clandestine organization of assassins and bounty hunters. But if their presence is already known to the Marines, then I guess it makes a bit more sense for them to not be so concerned with covering up their tracks like we see in this episode. And, without getting too much into spoilage for later episodes of this season, you could also rationalize this as an intentional decision by Miss All Sunday, given how much her own personal interests are being played up in this season. After all, at the end of this episode, she openly gives a Brokeworks calling card to Tashiki, something that does not make too much sense if she was concerned about keeping her organization's affairs secret. And this is something that we've seen her do in the source material as well, such as when she allowed Mr. Zero's identity to be discovered by Vivi and Igaram. Ukari confirms to the group that this was the work of Roronoa Zoro, and reveals to them that he serves under a pirate crew, which leads to Miss All Sunday taking an interest in our protagonist, Monkey D. Luffy. More on this at the end of the video. It is a bit convenient that his wanted poster would just be present atop these documents with anatomical sketches of the brain, but hey. This takes us to the Going Merry, where we find Sanji and Usopp in the kitchen. On the counter, we see some canisters of spices, including myrtle, nutmeg, and oregano, a touching inclusion after Season 1 established how much Sanji and Zeph disagreed on the usage of it in their cooking. Sanji is shown here in his classic look with the blue button-down shirt and black pants, but is also wearing a pink Doskoi Panda brand apron. This is a great inclusion, as while he's never worn this in the manga proper, it is a recurring inclusion by the anime and a fan favorite at that. Doskoi Panda is an in-universe fashion brand that first debuted in the cover page of Chapter 86 and became canonized in the following chapter with Helmeppo's hat. Oda explained in Volume 14's SBS that this brand is very popular in the East Blue and has a headquarters on Mirrorball Island, which is where much of the Django cover story takes place. We actually saw a storefront in Loketown in that very first Set Tour video with Jeff Ward, and there was also a reference to a competing knockoff brand, Cyber Panda, back in Season 1 on one of the Fishman's shirts. Usopp is seen tinkering with some of his inventions for his arsenal, something that we see him doing quite often in the series, either in the background or peripheral of a panel. And one really neat thing that this live-action series has been doing is that whenever you see him working on something in an episode, it usually comes back up around later on. We saw this in Episode 7 of Season 1, where he was putting together the smoke bombs that he used in the following episode. You could also spot a bottle of Boshi brand ketchup in that scene that pops up again here. This was of course the same brand that Usopp used during his fight with Chu to fake his own death. Boshi is Japanese for star and is a nod to Usopp's naming scheme for his techniques. It seems Usopp has been using Sanji's pepper for his new pepper bombs that we'll see on display in just a bit during the Loketown battle. Sanji tells him to use his own materials, as it's not like he uses Usopp's rubber bands for his cooking, which is a nod to Usopp's rubber band of doom technique. Nami is shown snacking on her favorite tangerines and is given a plate of sauteed black pepper octopus, potentially a reference to the dish that Sanji brought up when they were fighting Hachi, which prompts Usopp to complain about how he's feeding her these incredible meals while he gets stuck with egg sandwiches. This is a fun recurring crew dynamic from the source material. The map that we see here is the same one to the Grand Line that the crew stole from Buggy in the last season. Usopp suggests that instead of trying to sail up the Red Line, they could just go directly south. Nami quickly shuts this down, explaining that it would mean crossing the Calm Belt, a stretch of ocean that surrounds the Grand Line and lacks both wind and sea currents, making it impossible for regular ships to navigate, on top of being a hotbed for Sea Kings. This is of course exactly what happens to the crew in the source material when they accidentally end up sailing into it. This map depicts many of the Sea Kings that we saw in that spread, but also includes a fun nod to the Shandian god Kashigami. Upon hearing the threat of Sea Kings, Usopp agrees that it's a bad idea and lies about how he killed a bunch of them a while back, which is a fun spin on a lie that he tells to Chopper later in the series. Zoro is seen weight training, something that he does quite often throughout the series, but was first motivated by his inability to cut through steel. And this takes us to the reintroduction of our protagonist, Monkey D. Luffy, as he gets the wanted poster treatment that many of the notable pirates from the first season got. This is one of my favorite parts of the live action, as it's such a cool way to introduce a character formally, but also allows for some really fun characterization, as the poster usually gets interacted with by its owner. In Season 1, Alvida smacks it away with her mace, Buggy swipes it away with his hand, Arlong rips it apart with his teeth, Kuro shreds it with his claws, Mihawk cuts it into pieces with Yoru, and Krieg crumbles it up and throws it away. However, here, Luffy just lets it be, and it floats away on its own. This is because Luffy holds being a pirate in very high esteem, and has been wanting a bounty of his own since the start of the first season, so now that he finally has one, he's going to let it be for as long as he can. This is also exactly how Roger treated his wanted poster in the first season as well, which really helps to further the parallel between him and Luffy that this episode is trying to convey. Now, let's talk about the crew's outfits for this part of the episode. Nami's look is adapted straight from the source material, with the teal top and the black skirt, though her boots are from her classic East Blue look. Usopp's is taken directly out of the chapter 140 color spread, while Sanji's appearance on the ship is that of his classic look, with the Doskoi Panda apron as mentioned earlier, but in Logtown, he's seen in a light blue polo, adapting his shirt from the colored version of the chapter 80 cover page. Zoro is seen in a tank top here, but in Logtown has an adaptation of his classic look from Season 1, just like Luffy does, and I think it was a very deliberate decision to have both of these characters in their classic East Blue outfits, since they both have an iconic scene in this episode with Luffy visiting the place where Roger died, and Zoro testing his luck with the Sandai Katetsu. While there are a lot of changes to the minutiae of the Logtown arc, these two scenes are kept intact as much as possible. Nami explains the significance of Logtown to Luffy, just as she did in the manga, which settles the debate on whether they should go there, and there's a very funny line of her poking fun at the fact that they cut Logtown from Season 1, and with this, the crew sets sail with the Polestar Islands on the horizon as a rendition of the fan-favorite banger, We Are, plays in the background, just as it did at the end of the first season. This takes us to the title card for the episode, which is themed after the Pirate King himself, Gold Roger, featuring the Jolly Roger of his crew in the O. The eye is replaced with his weapon of choice, a cutlass named Ace, and much like the first episode of Season 1, this title card drops into an actual scene from the series with the end of Roger's execution in Season 1, and the crew sailing toward Logtown here, whereas every other episode in the first season had the title card cut the ongoing scene in some way. In the first episode of Season 1, the title card works the transition from a flashback to the present day, and here we go the other direction, as we return to Logtown 22 years ago on the day of Roger's execution. However, they don't specify the year this time around for a very intentional reason that I'll talk more about at the end of this video during the spoiler section. This sweeping overhead view of the execution platform is pretty much the exact same footage from the last season, with the major difference being the color grading. Things look a lot more vibrant this time around. I know a lot of people took issue with the sort of yellow dampening filter that many scenes had in the first season, and I think part of that was to play into this idea of the dawn as much as possible, and it didn't bother me personally, but I totally understand where people are coming from. The other change is that the number of people on the execution platform is different, as Roger and Garp are not yet up there, which brings us to a crazy adaptation of a scene that takes place much further into the series, where Roger asks Garp to take care of his child. The two exchange some compliments that are intended to be backhanded, and while the significance of each statement may be lost on those who are not fully in the know, the show does help to convey the idea that they are being tongue-in-cheek and passive-aggressive when Roger says that he enjoys their verbal warfare the most out of all their battles. And while I won't go into too much detail about what all these necessarily mean, I will say that God Valley is a historic incident in the world of One Piece that we only just recently learned the details of in the manga. It was first mentioned back during the Wano arc, but all you really need to know about it for the purposes of this episode is that Garp came out of it being recognized as a marine hero. The two share a hearty laugh together before Roger enters a coughing fit. This is a subtle nod at Roger's unknown illness that he came down with toward the end of his life, and this culminates with Roger entrusting Garp with the life of his child. It's pretty difficult to talk about this without ruining any sort of surprise that this exchange is supposed to be setting up, but I'm going to be trying my best to describe what the live action is doing here without giving everything away, because it is really cool, and I'll talk more freely about it during the spoiler section as well. Roger having a child was not something that was explicitly known to us as readers until a certain point far out into the series, but for a long time before that, there was plenty of speculation around whether he had any relation to Luffy. The events of the Loketown arc and the end of the Drum Island arc were big factors in fueling these theories, and while we have the answer at this point in time, it's really cool that the live action has included this scene so early on into the story as a way to recreate that experience of speculation for fans who are not caught up just yet. And what's more is, there is quite an interesting texture that was not present for us all those years ago, as the live action has already divulged Garp's relationship to Luffy in this series, creating a very fun puzzle for new fans. If you're one of those people who are not caught up with the series, I would love to read your perspective and your theories about this down in the comments. What did this scene make you feel? And please do not Google any of this, even if you think you have the right answer, as you definitely want to preserve the experience for yourself. So be careful. Roger declares piracy will not end with him, a nod to the fact that his death ended up starting the Great Pirate Era, and this cuts to Luffy and the crew sailing into the port of Loketown as we get a similar sweeping shot of the surrounding sea, just like we did with Season 1. Although back then, this area was full of pirate ships who had come to see the execution of Gold Roger. Now, all these pirate ships are being kept at bay by the marine warships protecting the town. You can spot the Loketown Marine Base here, run by Captain Smoker, who we'll be meeting shortly. The entrance has been adapted slightly differently, now including the marine insignia, as Loketown has been reimagined as the greatest marine stronghold in the East Blue. This is partly due to the Marines capitalizing on the historical significance of it being where Roger was born and died, and is a nice way to play up Smoker's reputation for never allowing a pirate to escape from the city. Now, the Loketown set is actually incredible. There are so many Easter eggs and details hidden all throughout. This will take a while, but it will be so worth it, so grab a snack, get comfy, and let's do this. First and foremost is the statue at the center of this plaza, depicting a man holding this ring that reads the beginning and the end. This is of course the name of this episode, as well as the epithet of Loketown, referring to this place being the start and end of Roger's life, which is also echoed in Loketown's name with the concept of a story's prologue and epilogue. A major theme in this series, but in particular in this episode, is the idea of inherited will and how the end of one man's story can lead to the start of another's. And this cyclical nature is why the statue depicts these words on a ring. The plaque reads, "This statue marks the end of piracy's dark reign, heralding a new era of justice on the high seas, a testament to maritime triumph, the dawn of a lawful age, reminding all of the collective resolve that banished the shadows of lawlessness." And at the bottom says, "By the order of the world government," with its symbol inscribed above. This season gives us our first look at the concept of the world government outside of its military branch of the Marines, and so this works as a great way to set that up for the upcoming episodes. In the live action, the crew has just happened to sail into town on the 22nd anniversary of Gold Roger's execution, an annual celebration known as Marine Victory Day. This is an invention for the live action series and works as a show of force by the Marines and government as an attempt to rub the execution of the Pirate King into the face of piracy. Though one big recurring element throughout One Piece is how the government's hubris can end up backfiring on them and cause them far greater problems. By celebrating Roger's execution every year and drawing more attention to it, they end up inspiring future threats like Luffy and his generation of pirates. And I love that the creators of the show are really playing into the self-imposed folly of the world government with this series. Take, for example, God Valley. In the source material, this event was largely covered up and went unbeknownst to future generations, while here, it's been made into a Hamilton-esque musical in an effort to bolster the image of the Marines. At the Loketown Opera House, you will find that the current production is Hero of the Marines, the award-winning musical. While the camera does not focus too much on any of the incredible details on this building, we do have a lot of behind-the-scenes footage that I've covered in previous breakdowns to help paint the entire picture. The text at the bottom has some reviews from various in-universe outlets, with the World Economy newspaper giving it 5 stars and saying that it's beautifully directed. This is the global newspaper that we've seen throughout the source material and Season 1 as well. Below that, the Loketown Daily News claims that it is a historically accurate musical depiction of the God Valley incidents, which is hilarious knowing that all of those events have been covered up. These reviews also decorate the front of the building with a new one in the bunch all the way to the right that reads, "Critically acclaimed, given by Big News Morgans, the president of the World Economy newspaper." And all the way up top is a really fun design that depicts several devil fruits. The first one is a bit generic and could really be anything, perhaps even the Gum Gum fruit. Beside it is the Op Op fruit. One down is the Sing Sing fruit from Film Red. And lastly, it looks to be the Flower Flower fruit that we talked about previously. Behind the statue in the center is a building titled Manmire. This is a reference to one of the 20 world noble families that we only learned of relatively recently in the series. You'll find that many of the streets and buildings in Loketown are named after various high-ranking Marine and world government affiliates. When the crew first enters this area, there is a red and blue shopping bag in this woman's hand. From that original set tour video with Jeff Ward, we know that this is actually from Obeka Hamburg. In the source material, this is the clothing store that Nami went to try on a bunch of clothes. You can spot the window of his store just behind Zoro a bit later on. And you can see the salesperson who works there, Hanger, in this shot using the local tram to get around. Behind him are a bunch of advertisements for Marine Victory Day, including events like East Blue Cuisine, a Wheel of Fortune, Strength Test, Thrills, Spills, and Puppets, a traveling fortune teller, Shoot the Target, and a dazzling magic show. You'll see various references to absolute justice, which is the overarching philosophy of the Marines. And there is an ad for a uniform specialist. Beneath it, you'll find two numbers, 670 and 342. This may be how transponder snails work in this world of the live action with 6-digit numbers, but coincidentally, 670 is the chapter where Luffy and Smoker clash for the first time in the Punk Hazard arc after not seeing each other for a long while. In this shot, there's also a man walking by with a black and white Doskoi Panda tote bag, which we'll be seeing a lot of throughout this episode. Behind the straw hats on this wall, you'll spot some familiar bounty posters from Season 1, with Buggy and Alvida, subtly foreshadowing their appearance as antagonists in this episode. Season 1 also showed off Cavendish's bounty poster, but his inclusion in this episode is pretty fun, considering that we are getting Bartolomeo as well. And that's about it for everything I wanted to talk about in Episode 1 of Season 2. I know that was a ton. Trust me, I did not expect to have so much to talk about in just the first episode. Hopefully the rest of the breakdowns will be a lot shorter. Let me know what you thought of the episode down in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing as it helps the channel grow and lets you get all of my videos as soon as they come out. Thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and I hope to see you in the next one.
A pirate is someone who has adventures.